Yay! Cara is going to be here with us tonight, presenting suffering, the talk suffering, on suffering, not presenting suffering. Welcome, everyone. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy your time here. Every time we come here, it's an opportunity for us to get in touch with the subtle vibrations in this room. And I invite you for a short opening prayer. If you can close your eyes for a few seconds, please, and find your breath. Find your breath as you find that yourself, you are here in this moment. You are in this building. You are in Pompano Beach, in Florida, United States, on planet Earth. And we are all here together. Yes, we have a lot of things, a lot of struggle in life, but we also have moments like this that we come together as a group of people that are building the happy world. And there are a lot of people like us, and we think about them, and we embrace them. We send them our love and our care, especially those that are in suffering right now and desperation. Let's come together here, prepare ourselves to receive words, teachings. Let's open our hearts and open our minds. And may we get out of here today with one word or something that we can aggregate, we can add to our life and to our experience. And if not, at least we can be sure that we got in touch a little bit deeper with our spirituality here in this spiritual school, in this spiritual hospital. And I will ask all of us that together we create an environment of love and respect for one another. And may our good vibrations and energy involve the speaker of our meeting tonight. And may she present with her heart and her mind the work she prepared for us. Thank you, Good Spirit, for protecting this meeting, for being with us. And so be it. Thank you.
So many mics.
Yeah. Okay.
Good?
Good.
You can hear me now? Yay. So I'm actually happy to be talking about suffering, which probably seems weird. I don't know how many of you were here on Monday night. Anyone here for the talk on Monday night, for Enrique's talk? Well, he was talking about my pain, your pain, our healing. And this talk had been prepared probably 3 weeks before that. So when I was sitting here, I said, oh, I'm so happy to be there too, taking notes and learning what else I could be learning about such an important topic, because all of us suffer. All of us suffer. And I'm so intrigued by this topic because I want to learn, why do we suffer? Why sometimes do things hurt so much? And what is my right relationship with suffering in a way that would allow me to grow? What is my relationship with suffering in a way that helps me learn more about myself, to learn about knowledge? And I'm sure I'm not the only person here that suffers, right? So, some questions I could ask would be, I might need some help with this. Okay, here we go. So some questions I could ask, I'm not sure which button makes this. Okay, there we go. When we think about suffering, right? Like which one of us anyone here has ever lost a loved one? Anyone? Okay. How about, anyone here ever experienced, poverty or had problems with your finances or a change in fortunes for the worse, right? How about when you were in the middle of it, have you ever said, why me? Why is this happening to me? Anyone? Well, that's me too. And I'm always wondering, what is the purpose of suffering? And so on Monday, Enrique gave this really beautiful and powerful talk, but the perspective of science and neuroscience. He talked a lot about the mental causes of suffering and how we can dialogue with ourselves in a way that helps alleviate that suffering. And the perspective I will be sharing with you tonight is simply the results of me reading what I was able to find in the gospel and in one of my favorite books, Renunciation. Has anyone ever read this book, Renunciation? I love this book. If you have not read it, I ordered it on the Kindle, and I think I started at like 10 p.m. I stayed up all night. I could not stop. It's such a good book. And then I finished it. I think I got up the next morning and finished it before I went to work. Like, it's just that good. Such a good book. We're going to talk about it a little bit tonight. So why do we suffer? That's my first question for us, right? Why is it that we suffer? So the first question that was answered for me in the gospel is that the idea of divine justice. Because when we say, why me? It's as though, well, I don't deserve that suffering. Why should it be me? Oh my God, this keeps going ahead. Help me. Which button takes it forward and back? I don't know what I'm pressing here.
No problem. This one is back.
Okay.
And this one is forward.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to set it down. All right. So, divine justice, if we think about the idea of why me, as if there was some unfairness involved, the question behind the question of why me is, maybe I didn't deserve this suffering. But we know from the gospel, right, that every effect has a cause. Every effect has a cause. Our suffering has a cause, right? Why us can be answered, right? If everything we're feeling is an effect, there was a cause behind that effect, right? And if we believe in God, then that cause also must be just, right? So the question of why me, I think this helps us understand that, is that the root of the why me is divine justice would allow us to know that if we believe God is fair, then whatever is happening to us is also fair. So that sort of answers it's happening to us because there was a cause, right? And the effect is our suffering. And it's also what we learn in the gospel is that it's a warning that we have erred, that we have made an error. And the thing about this is that, we've erred or that we've sinned. And there's a definition of sin that I heard that I really loved, that it just means missing the mark. That's all. It just means that we had an intention to do this, and we ended up doing that. And, there's a whole lot of energy around the word sin, but it's really just an error. And the gospel tells us it's a warning. It just lets us know we're suffering because we missed the mark, right? And it's also as a motivation to change our ways. And so there's two kinds of suffering from the perspective of the gospel in chapter 5, the suffering that we can avoid and the suffering that we can't avoid. So when we talk about avoidable suffering, we know that in terms of cause and effect, that's things we've done in this life, right? And I love what this says. This is almost a direct quote. It says, if we calmly examine our conscience, because let's think about it. When we're hurting, that's not our time of calm examination of our conscience. We're doing what? Oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? Or if we're past that, it might just be, this hurts so much I can't concentrate. This is so painful, I don't know if it's going to end, right? We have all of these ways. Each one of us has a different relationship to suffering. But if we can get to that place of calmly examining our conscience, then we can find in this life, now this is the avoidable suffering, that we've got this is just from the gospel, right? Self-interest, or often we know this as selfishness. This is the biggest problem that we have really in our morality, is our selfishness. and lack of discipline. I mean, one can only look at my body to tell that I've got lack of discipline in certain areas like food intake, right? I can't say I'm suffering because I'm so overweight and not see, I'm not exempt from this, right? I mean, we all have effects that when we examine ourselves, if we examine ourselves calmly. Pride has been a subject we've been talking about every Thursday night for a few weeks. Pride produces all kinds of problems if we are not careful about it. And all of these vices, excesses, there's not one of these that will not produce a tremendous amount of suffering in this lifetime. And if we ask, why me? And we calmly examine our conscience, we can see that we are the cause of our suffering when it comes to avoidable suffering, right? So, how can we avoid it? I mean, the things that we would need to do, according to the gospel, right, is to work for our moral improvement. How do we do that? How do we work for our moral improvement? Anyone? How do we do that? Studying and practicing, I love that.
Self-knowledge, I like self-knowledge a lot.
Self-knowledge. Just also, it says work for our intellectual improvement. So study would be that, self-knowledge. What else can improve our moral? I don't have like an answer. This isn't a trick question. I'm just curious to hear. I mean, I know that building virtues is how we develop our morality, but there's a lot of virtues to develop, and it's up for us. This is our school. This life is a school for our soul. This center is a place that's a school and a hospital for our soul, right? It's a place for us to learn how to do this. But this is for us, when we ask, why me? We can also ask, why am I accepting or not accepting this opportunity to grow morally? Why am I accepting or not accepting an opportunity to grow intellectually? This is what we're being instructed in the gospel. And so the flip side to this, right, is the unavoidable suffering. So suffering that's unavoidable is from our past life, right? So this what we've done in the past and we're in this life to expiate, it's not something we did in this life, so we can't avoid that. If I am here in this life, and we all are, that in this world of trials and expiations, we're all here because we are evolving, and part of our reality here is that we are also paying debt. I think it was Miriam last week on Wednesday that spoke about obsession. Mm-hmm. She said we are here to offset debt. That's literally what she said. She was talking about obsession, but we're here to offset debt, and that is true. That is true. We are here to pay. And so, the cause, I keep pressing this, which I'm going to put it down. So we experience the suffering that is not produced by what we talked about before of our vices or selfishness or pride or excesses or vices. The suffering that we did not create in this life is what we have come here to pay debt for. We cannot avoid that suffering. It's here. It's here. And the part that, to me, hurts the most is that we experience the pain that we've caused others. Like I have heard it said that we shed the tears that we have caused to be shed on someone else's cheeks, right? So that's like, that's heavy, right? Like, what do you do with that? Like, what's the right relationship to this? This is what we'll talk about today, right? And even though, luckily, it's a gift that we don't remember our past lives. I always say that's a gift. It's a gift. The things that we struggle with the most are really good clues to what we're here to work on. So I know mine is obviously discipline is one of them. that's obvious for me. But whatever we're struggling with the most, that's clues to where our opportunity, the seeds of opportunity for our growth are. Whatever and we all know, right? We all know there's like one or two things that are like, oh, if I could just do this, I would be happy. If I could just do this, I know that I would grow. So that thing, that's our work. That's our work, right? And no one can tell you what that is. We know fully well what that thing is, right? And so this is our unavoidable suffering. This is what we bring to this incarnation as a gift, right? This is our opportunity to pay down those debts, as Miriam said, and also to help ourselves advance. But suffering, like, that's so heavy. What do we do with that, right? So here's some questions for us. Before we talk about what we can do with suffering, let's think about what are some of the types. So this is where we get a little review for those of you that were here last week, or last Monday with Enrique, right? There's physical suffering. That's the pains that we have in our body, or that is perhaps what happens when we don't have financial security and maybe our homes are not safe and we have physical discomfort, or it could be illnesses, or right? These are things that happen to our body. And then there's the emotional suffering, which often I think, at least for me, sometimes I feel like that hurts more than physical stuff, because I feel like physical things are, okay, I know why that's here. I know if I have it, like Enrique said, right? If I have a headache, I can, start to examine that. Do I need to drink more water? Do I need to get more sleep? There's ways I can deal with it. But emotional suffering sometimes feels like, I don't know about you all, but sometimes emotional suffering feels like it will never end. Has anyone ever felt like that? You're hurting, it'll like never end, right? That's like the biggest lie that we tell ourselves. In fact, as someone who has been so dedicated to not feeling pain and running from using every possible form of anesthesia to not feel pain, I told myself 3 lies about it. That if I let myself feel it, it would never end. It would kill me, or I would go crazy. This is the lie that I told myself, and to excuse my unwillingness to experience pain. This is not true. So I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and you know what? When I let myself feel it, it ends. I'm not dead, and I'm not insane. But these are things that we tell ourselves because this emotional pain hurts so much. And then this mental suffering. So this is a lot of what was talked about on Monday. This is this idea inside of our mind. And it's funny you were talking about Buddhism tonight, because there's a Buddhist perspective on suffering, which is that they call it dukkha. It just means that suffering exists. There's literally no way around it, that suffering exists. And from the Buddhist perspective, our job is to engage and build a right relationship to suffering in a way that helps us evolve, right? Instead of allowing suffering to direct us into more suffering or into patterns of behavior that produce more suffering, not just for us, but for people around us, right? It's when we can accept the fact that we suffer. And the mental suffering from the Buddhist perspective is a resistance to change. It's like when anything changes, and it's not the way we wanted it to be. We didn't get our way. We made a plan. It didn't happen. I wanted you to do this. You didn't do it the way I wanted you to do it. Now that's a change from what I wanted, right? This is what we do. This is many of our daily experiences. If we are examining ourselves calmly and examining our conscious calmly, we can see that again, a lot of this mental suffering, we're producing it ourselves. This is, again, if you haven't seen it and you speak Portuguese, Enrique's talk Monday was amazing. I highly recommend it. And so then there's also spiritual suffering. So spiritual suffering, it's almost like existential suffering. Like we're these spirits in these bodies, and we know we're all spiritists, right? We know that we're spirits in these bodies, and we're on this world of trials and expiations where there is more evil than good. That's just that whole idea. That's like we exist here. That's tough, right? That's tough, especially if we know how good it feels to be loved. We want to be loved. We want to be, we want to see the transformation happen. We want to see a world of regeneration where there's more love, right, than evil. But we're not there yet. That in and of alone, maybe our physical body, our physical self doesn't recognize that regularly, but our soul knows that, right? Our soul knows that, and it causes suffering, right? And so, the question for us is like, how can we be in right relationships to our suffering? What is the right relationship to our suffering? Well, the spirits have given us a lot of good examples. And I often say, the kind of books that I love the most, like books by Emmanuel, like Nasolar and 50 Years Later and 2,000 Years Ago, and like Paul and Stephen, like these great books that tell these stories of these that are like powerful, intense, like with plot twists, and they're amazing stories filled with characters that it's so easy to judge, right? It's so easy to judge. And I always say when I read those books, I look for myself in the people who are so easy to judge, right? Because each one of those characters that is demonstrating an obvious moral deficiency are for us to say, where's that in us? right? Where is that in us? And all of these wonderful books that we get from Emmanuel also have at least one truly evolved spirit that shows us the example, that shows us the way, right? That many times often helps that soul that we're judging, helps them move along their pathway in those stories. And I would say, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is my feeling, that that's in us too. I think that the reason why those stories are that touches us because we have that potentiality in us. So the spirits have shown us how to have this relationship, because if we don't engage in a good relationship with our suffering, there are consequences, right? Cause, effect. If we don't have a good relationship with our suffering, there will be effects. That will be the cause of some effects. And so if we refuse to feel it, what happens? Well, anesthesia through vice, right? That's one of the most common ways we say, I don't want to feel this. So we go shopping and we overeat, or we drink, or we smoke, or we whatever, right? There's all of these things, or we habitually argue with people. That's actually a vice that will, because if you're arguing with someone and we're focused on what we think someone else did wrong, guess what we're not studying? What we're feeling inside. Maybe we're a habitual complainer. There's so many vices we use to not feel, to escape the feeling of, I need to be present to my physical, emotional, mental, spiritual suffering. And that's a relationship that doesn't work. If we let ourselves feel it, right, we'll complain. Oh my God. Maybe we're not saying, why me? But have you ever picked up the phone and you call a friend and they say, how are you? Oh my God, let me tell you. And then you get like A to Z of all of the things that are going wrong with this person, right? And how do you feel after that? Right? It's intense. But that's a revolt. That's actually literally what the spirits say is a revolt. It's our resistance to what's happening in our being. And when we resist, what happens for us? Enrique talked Enrique, is that the way to say it? Enrique. Yeah, Enrique talked about this, that he had 3 questions, and I love this. I wrote it down. The first thing he said is, when we're feeling it, we can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this pain? What can I learn from this suffering? That we can actually sit in dialogue with the part of us that is noticing that it's suffering, and we can say, what is this lesson for me? Because we know all suffering has a cause, the effect. So what we can learn is like, what is the cause and what is my right relationship to this suffering in a way that allows me to benefit from the suffering? Because yes, that actually isn't the best possible outcome is that we benefit from our suffering, that our suffering is the cross that we carry, right? And I think it's Gospel chapter 7 that talks about, carrying the cross. It's about following Jesus, but it's also about carrying the suffering with us, like in a healthy and constructive way. And if we complain, we actually lose the benefit that the suffering was supposed to produce. I don't know if y'all know that. Like that's one of those, some stuff gets hidden in plain sight in the gospel, right? But if we complain, so that person who gives the long list of the suffering that they're experiencing, whatever benefit that this incarnation was designed to give them, especially if it's from a past life, they don't receive the benefit. It doesn't expiate. It just becomes just a trial that doesn't expiate and actually many times produces more debt. Because when we cause harm to the people around us through complaining about our suffering, we're actually incurring more debt. Because when we cause harm, right, what we're experiencing is the harm we caused others. I don't have to spell that out, right? So this is important for us. So what happens, right, is whichever one we choose, whether we refuse to feel it and we engage in anesthesia through vice, or if we do feel it and we complain, what happens is that we have to start again. We start again, right? And again, and this time, I've heard it said that we don't ever regress. That is, as spirits, that we evolve. We're always evolving, sometimes really slowly. Sometimes we might stop and not evolve at all, but we don't go backwards, right? So we're either stopping, we're moving really slowly, or in the case of those of us who actually put into practice the stuff we learn, if you're doing that, please talk to me. I want to know how you do that. And then, all right, then those are the ones that are moving more quickly, but we never regress. But we can start again with this time with more debt. And like Miriam said, right, we're here to collect debt. So what do we do? Right, so there's some guidance from chapter 5. And the first thing is to elevate ourselves by means of thought. Elevate ourselves by means of thought. The suffering that we experience is happening in our mind. Our mind is giving us the clues whether we should be hurting or not. Our mind is giving us the clues whether we should be complaining or not. Our mind is giving us the clues of whether we think we deserve it or not. Our mind is producing, our thoughts are producing the narrative about how we should feel. Our thoughts instruct us on how we should feel. So if we elevate ourselves and then allow ourselves to, if the physical plane is here and we elevate our thoughts to realize this is one existence of many, and we elevate ourselves, we can see that God's justice is never broken. The second is to render thanks to God. So that's the hard part, right? We're hurting. It doesn't feel good. We think it's not going to end. We don't know why we're suffering. And then to lift ourselves out of that and give thanks to God, that's sort of counterintuitive, right? I mean, I don't know how many people have, if you've ever done this, raise your hand. Have you ever really been suffering? You're like, thank you, God, for the suffering. Yes.
Not too many.
Okay, that's it. And did it transform though when we do that?
Yeah.
See, it's remembering to do that, right? Because God, out of the divine infinite goodness, even with the just, it gives us the possibility of reparation and does not irrevocably condemn us like some other traditions teach, right? There's always a possibility for us to redeem ourselves. And the redemption is through changing our ways and through suffering. There's really just no way out of it, right? And then I love that it says those who suffer must tell themselves that they have much to expiate and should rejoice at being healed sooner. Now, how about that? The next time that pain is really deep and we say to ourselves, this is healing. This means I'm healing now. This is like a possibility for the future. It's hard to do. I feel like sometimes I want to print this stuff out and hang it up so I remember, like I know this makes perfect sense. I know, this isn't new to any of you. I'm sure everyone here has read the gospel, right? This is not new. But the remembering to apply it in the midst of it is like the hard part, right? So I'm here with you all absorbing this to hopefully help myself remember it too. And I think it was Celia in 50 Years Later that said that suffering to her, every time she suffered, she would pray for a portal of light to open, that she could walk through that portal of light and understand what the other side of that suffering was. And I loved that. I was like, oh, write that down and remember that too. But it's lovely. It's lovely, these examples that we get. And so this is the part we want to know, right? How can we show up for ourselves? How can we show up for ourselves and create a right relationship to suffering, right? In a way that benefits us, not in a way that produces more debt, or more suffering, or stops us, or makes us have to start over, or puts us into the thought spiral of this will never end. I will be crazy. I will be dead. Because we are not always calmly examining ourselves, right? How do we engage in right relationship to suffering in a way that benefits us? The first thing we're told is patience, right? That this is also from Gospel chapter 5, that if we can take these pains and bear them patiently while we're here on earth, we're told it will save you from centuries of suffering in the future life. I want to say that again. If we feel what we're feeling right now patiently, that saves centuries? Like how many incarnations is that? Like this is literally this is not my words. And that's powerful, right? So patience. And patience really means when we're impatient, we want whatever we want at the moment that we want it. The inability to be patient is the inability to wait and say, this is going to come in its own time. And its own time might not be my time, right? It will come in its own time. So the end of that pain comes at its own time. Yes, question?
So our brothers and sisters that were brought here from Africa and were enslaved for centuries through all the Americas. So they should be for centuries just say, thank you, hallelujah, we're here just in bondage because that's our karma and we're evolving from that?
So there are so many types of intense suffering that to present a message like this in the midst of that suffering would probably be difficult. I think we could say it and it would be true, but would that bring a consolation? Probably not. Probably not. right? So this message is designed for us in this state of consciousness and with our level of awareness. When we are talking about people who have been brutalized and tortured and enslaved, it's a very different message one must bring. And I don't think this would be it. I think that message must be that God is always present and that the comfort of Christ is available to us if we need it. I don't even know if messages of forgiveness are going to land where we got to meet people where we are, where they are. So yeah, I wouldn't think that this would be the message to bring at that point. Yeah, good question. And how we comfort each other when we're suffering is actually on the next slide. So the second thing is to have resignation. And this is a word that I really struggled with. You know, I've been studying Spiritism for, I don't know, maybe almost 10 years. Every time I hear this word, I'm like, why would I resign? Like, that's like quit to me. Like in the English language, resignation, like you don't like your job anymore, you put in your resignation, you resign. Like, I never really understood this word. I've always had to kind of study it, right? But it's saying that if we complain, was there a question? Okay, sorry, I heard someone. If we complain and we don't accept them with resignation and as something deserved, if we accuse God as unjust, then we actually get more debt, right? We get more debt that causes the loss of the benefit that we would have gotten from suffering. This is for us to learn as Spiritists. As I said, I would not give this to people who don't understand Spiritism or the multiplicity of existences or the plurality of worlds and are in that deep level of suffering. I think it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you got to, if people don't, yeah, this is not that message. But when we think about patience and resignation, patience, if you think about, it's really big now, the buy now, pay later. Right? You can buy something and you pay in for, or, you know, you can, all of these things. But patience is like pay now, receive later, right? It's the difference. It turns that like on its head. And resignation, what helped me understand what this means is, this is in chapter 8, that obedience is the consent of reason. It's the consent of our mind. But resignation is the consent of the heart. And it's allowing our hearts to say, I can hold this, right? I can hold this temporarily. And so, yeah, this comes from chapter 5. Resignation comes as acceptance, yes. I think it's the acceptance with the heart. Because in our minds, we'll reject it, right? I think that's and I rejected the whole concept of resignation itself. I couldn't even get to the meaning of it. So yes, I love that. I think that's a better way to say it. Yeah, resignation is acceptance. And I would add with the heart.
That's a very good point. Would you have you ever did a little research on which word would be equivalent to resignation? So when we are talking to Americans, there will be a better understanding?
I have not, but I can. I had to find a definition that worked for me, and it's the spirit Lazarus. It was in a Spirit's message in chapter 8 that said the resignate consent of the heart. But I will do that. I think that should, because I mean, I don't know if I'm probably, I think I'm probably the only like American in the room, I think, right? I'm the only American?
Maybe
Okay.
conformism or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not point of sense, if I understand, is acceptance.
I think acceptance. I think that's the best one I've heard. Yeah.
Acceptance is giving yourself to thought of a superior.
Yeah,
And
I would agree with that. And I like that. Acceptance feels different because, yeah, it's a different energy. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So my favorite book, like right now, love this book. So here's some examples from the Good Spirits, right? So in the book Resignation, so first we have some characters here. So the main character, what's happening there? The main character is it's good. Okay, the main character is Alcyone, but then her mother, Magdalena. There we go. I think this went way ahead. I don't know why this doesn't love me today, but that's okay. We have some patience.
Pointed in this direction.
Which direction? Oh, yay. Okay. That was much better. Okay, so Magdalena, the mother of Alcyone, she was suffering because her husband was ready to discarnate. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna put it down. Okay, but she said that as she as she prayed. No, this is how I can demonstrate patience.
In resignation.
Yes, and acceptance. And the message still stays the same. But anyway, Magdalena was the mother of Alcyone, and before Alcyone was born, Magdalena's husband was discarnating, and she was praying. And I loved what she said in her words.
It's because it's the other one. You should push.
So I want to go back. I press this one, right? To go back?
Yes.
Okay, back. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Nope, that's. Well, you all get to watch me exercise patience. Okay, click. Let's see if it goes. Click. See if it goes.
There you go.
Click. See if it goes.
One more. Yeah, there you go.
Rich is helping from there, so he
Oh, he is? Okay, can you just go back? Perfect, leave it there. Perfect, awesome. All right, so she humbled herself, and it says she prayed, and the pain no longer humiliated her, but it dignified her soul. That, I think, is, those of you that said that you had prayed during the times of suffering, I've never heard this term to dignify our soul. Because like dignity is when you are, when you feel whole inside and you feel that there's a sense of purpose. That if we pray while we're suffering, that we can experience that sense of purpose. And then she also said that, you know, she'd been praying, but she won't lose faith. And that divine providence knows the reasons for our trials, right? And we are too small to argue with the heavenly plans. Now that, I will admit, I struggled with. Like, so if I'm supposed to be dialoguing with God about my suffering, but I'm too small to question it, well then where does that leave me in my relationship? I mean, I'm just sharing with you all like the challenges I have with the stuff that I read. I'm like, what does that even mean, right? How is that helpful? But if we think about even how our one life is all of the existences that we've had, that we're going to have, this life is pretty small. And actually, when we even try to wrap our minds around the immense enormity of God, we can't even understand. We don't even have good words to describe the magnificence of God. And when we do, the minute we start trying to describe God, that we've already shrunk the infinite to our limited perception. So I was able to allow my pride to like move out of the way a little bit so that I could make sense of that. And if we could go to the next one, thanks. So let's see if I can try it. Yeah, it's working. So comforting others wisely. Now this goes to the question that you had. I'm so expressive here. That goes to the question that you asked, right? How do we comfort people who are suffering? How can we do this wisely? So the first one she did is comforting, this is now Alcyone talking. So her little brother, Robbie, he was deformed. He had body malformations, and he was being bullied in his school. Right, he was being bullied. And so she was comforting him and she said, you know, well, so what of it? So what? You know, when we fulfill our duty to God and when we are able to fulfill our duty to God, to fulfill our duty to our consciousness, that the rudeness of other people and their ingratitude is relegated to the low level where it belongs. And she said that deformities of the body are better than deformities of the soul. That's powerful, right? Because even all of our physical stuff, it's like it's better to have the physical problems than to engage in behaviors that are going to produce stains on our own peri-spirit and our spiritual body for years and years to come. And then when she was comforting Susanna, who was suffering, I think this was her sister-in-law, she said, let's pray and ask God for resignation, acceptance with our heart, and peace of mind. And said, calm down. The power of darkness vanishes before the divine light. And I love this. Let's run to the arms of God like children seeking their mother's lap when a wild animal is approaching, right? Just putting that visual image into our brain changes the energy, changes our vibration, that we have the opportunity to do that. And that we know that whatever we are feeling that could feel like it could take us to a place of darkness, it vanishes before the light. And then also, so Robbie, the little boy, got hit by a carriage, right? And that's how he discarnated in this story. And he's laying in Alcione's arms, discarnating. And I love what she says. She says, "You did very well." Because the driver could have been arrested. They actually, the police at that time came to arrest the driver because it was an obvious act of carelessness. And he said, don't arrest the driver. Don't arrest the driver. Don't arrest him. This is my time to go. So he actually did a really beautiful thing at his discarnation. So Alcione was praising him and said, "You did well." And I love this. We mustn't argue with the world to find the path that leads to God. Think about how much of our suffering is because we argue with people, places, and things, right? And is that really ours to do, right? We don't argue to find the path of God. And then there's just one last one on this from the examples, and then I think we're just about to wrap up here. Let's see if I can make this one happen. Yay. So Pollux, who shows up as Charles in this book, Pollux was this soul that occurred, like twin soul, if you will, that she had agreed to incarnate to help him. We learned this at the beginning of the book. And in the story, they are not to have a romantic relationship, and he keeps insisting that they should have this romantic relationship. So he tries to get her to run off and marry him. And I love what she says, "Let us love the endeavors of our pathway, no matter how hard it seems, and that we'd never be able to build a nest of happiness and peace in a tree of wrongdoing, and that all troubles, all bitterness, all joys come and go, that joy and trust in the eternal future remain, and that they are the assets of our divine heritage in this eternal plan." So these are a series of examples, whether someone is bullying you or treating you poorly, or in this time where we're all still sort of confined to a certain degree, like not talking to you the right way, not doing things the right way, like this, in whatever reason disagreeing with us, we know that, question, was there a question? Oh, sorry. We know that, that there's an opportunity for us to hold a space of peace, to hold a space of calm, to calmly examine our conscience, to look at how we can hold a space for all of these examples, knowing that we are fulfilling our duty, that we have an opportunity to pray and ask for acceptance and peace of mind, that we can know not to argue with the world in order to find our way to God. These are all wonderful examples that we have from the spiritual world. So just a couple more examples and then we will wrap up. So from chapter 6 in the gospel, I love this. And this is, again, all those who raised their hands and said that when you prayed, when you were hurting and that the suffering, received comfort. This is a promise, right, from the Spirit of truth, that God consoles the humble and gives strength to the afflicted when they ask. And here's the key, by the way, is that when we're suffering, is not to ask for the suffering to be gone, but to ask for the strength to hold it, right? To ask for the strength to, and the calm and the peace to be able to have that calm self-examination of our conscience, right? And his might covers the earth, and in every place, with every tear shed, he places a consoling remedy, and that abnegation and resignation are a continuous prayer and contain profound teaching, and that human wisdom resides in these two words. And if all suffering spirits could understand this truth, instead of clamoring or complaining against their pain and moral sufferings, which it behooves them to partake, right, for our own growth. So this is a good medicine for us. And so I just wanted to end this with a series of pictures that I found about the idea of carrying up our cross, because I think our suffering can be likened to that, and we're told to take up our cross, right? I'll just read it. Don't even worry about it. Okay, there it is. But it says, this is from, it says Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I think many of you know the gospel. The same stories are repeated because each of those apostles was telling the story of this. But basically saying, if you want to come after me, if you want to follow me as Christ, take up your cross, right? And follow me. For whoever wants to save himself will be lost. Whoever loses himself out of love for me and the gospel will be saved. And in truth, what good would it do for a man to gain the whole world or a life free from suffering, but lose himself, but to lose the benefit that we have? And so that's another one I struggle with, taking up the cross. Like, what does that even mean for us to carry a cross? Like, I take stuff so literally. So when I study, I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, my suffering, I'm dragging a suffering around like a cross? What does that mean? So there's an explanation in pictures. I'm gonna see if I can make this work. So I saw this series of comics. Will it work? No? Okay. So that there's a series of people that are like carrying their crosses, right? Has anyone seen this? Okay, y'all have seen this? So if you've seen this, raise your hand. Okay, so 3 of us. So you know this, right? That, they're carrying it, and this is, it's too heavy. That's the, oh gosh, why me? I need you to take away some of this suffering. Can you please cut this thing down a little bit? And then if you could advance to the next one, I think I'm going to accept that this is not working. I'm going to accept it. And if you could just advance just to the next picture. All right, so you see him sawing it off, and then the next picture. He's like, it's a little lighter now. And you see he's singing. He's like, yeah, I'm feeling a little better. This thing is off. And then you can see everybody else is struggling, but he's got a little bit less of a burden. And if you can go to the next one. This is literally how I know I visualize this in my, please take it all away. And of course, every cause has an effect. And it's like, well, if you could just cut it down a little more, or that prayer of, please, can you just take away the suffering? It's too much. I can't take it. Even though we know that we're not given more than we can bear. He says, thank you so much. We're good. I've got this, a little less to carry now, right? And if you go to the next one, I think this is just the last series of them. He's, now got his shorter cross. He's rolling along. He's singing again. Nobody else is singing. Everybody else is struggling. He's like, la, 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 la. Then he gets to, they get to an abyss, right? And everyone's using their bridge. And you can see where this is going, right? If you haven't seen it, you can easily see where this is going, right? Because these abysses represent our opportunities to develop our soul. These abysses represent the times we've all had the dark night of the soul where we need to be able to hold the space of our own growth. We need to be able to hold the space of our own growing. We need to be able to take large leaps of faith to be able to allow our souls to evolve. But what happens to our friend here, who represents all of us, it's not this guy on the screen, right? It's all of us. If you just go to the last one, please. And thank you all for your patience with the technical difficulties. The last one, the last series of pictures, he realizes he can't cross because the cross is too short. Right? So when we are unable to or unwilling to hold our own suffering, this halts our development. Remember, it said it stops us. That's what I said earlier. We get stopped right where we are when we don't embrace the opportunity to move through this work. And now you can see, now he's really suffering, and now he's suffering alone because everyone that was walking with him, all those brothers and sisters, have moved on. And this is what happens. Many of us, when we're not going to, all of us here, we're not going to grow at the same rate. Those of you that pray when you're suffering, those of you raise your hands, you're probably going to move along a little faster than those of us that aren't doing that. Those of you that put into practice what we learned, probably going to move a little faster than those of us that don't, right? So we're all going to go at different rates. And at some point, we'll find ourselves alone with our suffering. And it's our opportunity now then to follow the examples that we've been given, such beautiful, beautiful examples, right? Which is, to summarize, would be to be patient, accept what is happening, examine our consciousness to see where it is that we caused this suffering for ourselves, develop ourselves morally by building virtues, develop ourselves intellectually through study, and most importantly, to remember to pray. Because that's the one thing, and the prayer is not to the prayer is not to shorten the cross. The prayer is to help us to be strong enough to hold the suffering. The prayer is to open that portal of light for us to walk through to see, what can, like Enrique said, what can this teach me? What will this bring me so that I can transform? Because that's why we're here, right? We're all here to transform. How will this help me to do that? And that's the right relationship. So there's just one last slide, and then we'll close. I love this. This is from the last chapter of the gospel that has all the prayers in it. It's a prayer to our guardian angel, because many times we really do forget to pray. And I love this. It says, beloved spirits and guardian angels, who God in his infinite mercy has permitted to assist mankind, be our protectors in all life's tests. Give us the necessary strength, courage, and resignation. Does not say, please remove the suffering. Doesn't say, please shorten the cross, right? Inspire us towards all that is good and restrain us from the downward inclined to evil, anesthesia through vice, right? Complaining and all of those things. May your sweet influences fill our souls. Make us feel that a devoted friend is by our side who can see our suffering and participates in all of our joys. And you, my guardian angel, never abandon me, because I need all of your protection to be able to support with faith and love, not take it away, support with faith and love the test that God has sent me. So that's the message that I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. Today is a special day, really special night. Cara doing her first lecture in our center tonight. She came from North Carolina, and she's here in Florida now. We're very grateful that you are here with us. So we're going to go into our reminders. Our barbecue party is April 10. Everybody got their tickets already? Raise your hand if you got your ticket. Oh my goodness. Yes, we are. Come on. So save the day, please. I want everybody there to join this day together with us. Okay? If you're a vegetarian, just come with, to have some fun. Play some songs, play some games with us. Have a wonderful day with us. On April 10, we are coming back to normal with our activities in our center. So this is great. The mediumship study group in English every Wednesday at 7 p.m. So we have several people here. There's a part of this group today. And we're doing this as part of our classes coming back, always studies. And this group is going to, in the future, become a mediumship meeting for brothers and sisters that are native English speaking. So this is very exciting moment for us. Very, very excited. The group guided meditation with Cynthia every Thursday at 7 p.m. It's wonderful. You guys should come if you guys not coming already. So it's so wonderful to be here in a group meditation. Like I said before, meditating by yourself is one thing, but when you're in a group meditation, it's at a whole different level.